Hello friends, this is Nick from Adobe Solutions, and today we are going to continue with the next lab from the series, which is going to be working with the vCenter server from VMware. So in this lab we are going to install and then configure a vCenter Server Appliance. We are going to add the two esxi hosts that we've configured in the previous videos, and we are going to make some additional configurations to configure the esxi hosts to be NTP clients. And we're going to try and back up the vCenter Server Appliance so we can see what is the native backup solution that VMware have implemented. And in general, yeah, this is the video. So for this video, I will need my domain controller, which you can see right here. I'm going to use my storage server that I've configured with the storage attached to the esxi host, and my two esxi hosts, although we are going to use only a single one to deploy the appliance. So unfortunately, the vCenter Server Appliance is not a free to download package, and I've got mine from the VMware course that I was, and if you attend a official VMware course, you will be provided again with the vCenter Appliance installation package, and you will be able to install that yourself. If you have this into your production environment, I guess you can just download it from there and install it somewhere on your test lab if you can, of course. And it's not recommended to work directly in production. It's always a good idea, if you are not familiar with the vCenter Appliance or vCenter in general, not to make any tests or any deployments that you're not familiar with, because it can cause more problems than fix things. So in general, the vCenter Appliance is a pre-configured Linux-based virtual machine that is optimized to run for vCenter server, but you can use vCenter direct installation and install that on a Windows machine, on a Windows server that you specify. But to make things faster and cleaner, I'm just going to use this appliance instead. So I've already attached the appliance to my storage server that you can see right there. And yeah, like I said, the appliance contains everything that is needed for the vCenter to work properly, and we're just going to install that from the installer exe. So I'm not going to dig deep into what you can do with vCenter right now, but let's say that it's a centralized software that you can use to attach all of the esxi hosts in your environment and manage them from a single location. So the first window that you can see is the options that you can use to start working with the vCenter appliance. And in my case, I will just have to select the install option because I don't have any vCenter servers and I would need to deploy one first. So the first window is the introduction, and it will give me a brief information of what I can do. I will need to accept the license terms on the next window, and on the third I have a few options that I need to select from. So in few words, the platform services controller is a component of the VMware Cloud Infrastructure Suite, which is responsible for identity management for administrators and applications that interact with the vSphere platform. So I have two options, and they are different because the first option, if I select one, everything with the vCenter server and the platform services controller will be installed on a single location, which is going to be embedded. And if I select the other options, of course, I can split this platform services controller to be separate. If I have already vCenter servers, I can install only the platform services controller, or I can only install the vCenter server if I have a platform services controller already installed. Of course, these scenarios on the bottom will allow you to configure high availability of the platform services controllers, and there are different scenarios that you can choose from. But to keep things simple, And in my environment, and depends on how large is the environment, there are recommendations from VMware which option you need to select. But for me, using only 2 hosts, I will select the embedded version, which is going to be great for my testing purposes and lab environment. So on the next page, I have to select the esxi host, which is going to basically this installation is going to deploy the vCenter to this host. So I'm going to select my first host, which is nlb esxi 01 nlblab.com. It's going to use the HTTPS port to connect to the host and the account and password for authentication. So I'm going to click next. And straight away it was able to connect to my esxi host, and it's asking me if I trust this certificate, because it's not a trusted one, which is understandable as I don't have any third-party trusted SSL certificates. So the next page will ask me what do you want to name this virtual machine that you're going to deploy, which is going to be the vCenter appliance. Of course, you can leave the default, but what I will do is for keeping the whole environment with the same naming convention, I'm just going to change that to nlb vCenter 01 or vc01, and I'm going to specify a root password for my vCenter server. So let me try to see if I'll be able to match that. And let me try. It's not, yeah, not much. Let me try again. Nope. Okay, so there is a minimum requirements for the password length and characters. So yeah, you need to check that and be sure that you remember this password, as it will be used in the future. So the next window is the deployment size, and you can see that depending on the environment that you're going to support with the vCenter server, you have recommendations for different sizes. So in my case, I only have I'll use the tiny deployment, because I have hosts up to 10 and VMs up to 100. But you can see that even with the tiny deployment, there is a lot of space, a lot of room for expansion. And I'm not entirely sure if you would have to redeploy the vCenter, but if you, for example, have to expand the environment, most probably you have to select a proper according. So in this page, plan for the future. Just be sure that you don't overestimate the environment or you don't underestimate it. The same stands with the storage size as well. I have default large and X large, and this is depending on how much, for example, I can click on the help here. This depends on what stats do you want to pick up and what events, alarms and tasks and so on. So this relates to the database and how much your database is going to grow over time. But I'm just going to select the defaults and click next. And the next page, it will ask me what is the data store, what is the storage that I want to deploy this appliance to. And I have two. If you configured a local storage on your esxi, you most probably have one or maybe more. But I'm just going to select one of the data stores that I have, and a really important thing for testing purposes. I'm just going to enable the thin disk mode, which means that the vCenter appliance will not allocate all the required space, that's the storage space, and instead it will start from a smaller disk and it will grow over time. So I'm going to click next, and the next page we're going to configure the actual network settings. So for the network, I'm going to use my VM network, which is the default and a single network for now. And IP version is going to be IPv4. The IP assignment, I recommend it for your vCenter server to be static. And for the system name, I'm just going to select the same, which is nlbvc01 nlblab.com. Okay, the IP address I'm going to select is 10.0.0.25, and the subnet mask is going to be 255.255.255.0. Okay, system name is not resolvable to IP address. Yes, and this is really important, as it's going to need that this IP address is resolvable to this host name. So the first thing that I'm just going to do is switch back to my domain controller real fast and open Server Manager. Let's fix this before we forget about it. And under my DNS settings, the forward zone NLB, I'm just going to add a new record, which is going to be NLB VC01, and the IP address is 10.0.0.25, and I'm going to create a reverse record to match this. So now under the reverse zone, I have again a record for my vCenter server. So let me switch back to my server, and let's try to backup, select the data store that I want, next, and this time it should be able to resolve using the DNS name. So my gateway is going to be 254, and DNS server is 10.0.0.1. Okay, so these are the static settings that I want, and I'm going to click next. And on the next field, it will basically bring me to a summary of what is it going to do. For some reason it selected date store 02, but nevertheless I will just leave it the way it is and click finish. So it's going to initialize and install the vCenter Server Appliance on my esxi01, and I'm going to pause and resume when this is done, because it's going to take around 10-15 minutes to finish. Now that the deployment finished the first stage, as you can see, it's going to ask me to continue to the next one, and it took around 15-20 minutes on an SSD disk, so it could take more on a normal hard drive. So I'm going to click continue, so we can continue with the second stage of deployment. Okay, and next. So we will have to configure the time to synchronize with an NTP server, and that should be the network time server. So I'm going to specify my domain controller, as I don't have any internet access at the moment. So you can see that on the next page I will have to configure the SSO configuration for the vCenter, and this is the single sign-on. So the one that you have already built in is the vSphere.local, and I can get more information in here as well, but just for sake of testing, I'm just going to leave it as vSphere.local. But on a later state, I'm going to try and use my NLB lab domain to be configured as an SSO as well. So I'm going to specify a password for the administrator account and confirm that. And the site name is going to be default site, so let me see, let's say NLB site A. Let's leave it like that. So I'm going to click next, And this is the window where you want to, if you want, you can join the customer experience improvement program. I'm going to deselect this one and click next. And again, these are the settings that are going to be applied on the second stage, and click finish. So it's going to warn me that I'm not going to be able to pause or stop the installation once started, so I'm going to click OK. And this is going to start configuring and finishing, wrapping up the actual installation of the vCenter appliance. So the second stage of the deployment I've completed, and what I can do is I have the option to click on the appliance getting started object, and let me select Firefox. It will say that it's insecure connection, but I know that yeah, it is secure. And you can see that I have several options that I can use. I can use the web client, which is the Flash version, or the HTML5, which is a newer deployment that is provided by VMware. But let me try with the Flash version, as this is only partially functioning at the moment. So yeah, it's going to ask me to download and install Adobe Flash Player. So I'm going to install that so we can make things working, and I'll be back in a moment. So after installing the Adobe Flash Player, I don't see the annoying message on the top, and I only had to restart the browser. So I'm going to use the administrator at vSphere.local and the password that I specified, and let's try to log in to the actual vCenter server. Okay, so it's thinking about it, trying to log me in to the portal, and it's giving me a bit of problems and that's why VMware decided to add their own functionality using HTML5, because the Adobe is giving problems to the vCenter, and yeah, it's not working in some browsers, and it's going to make problems for the administrators in general. So this is the basic overview of the vCenter server, and as far as I can see, I'm happy that it went well. And right on the top you'll see a message that it's going to my license is going to expire, or it has expired, and this is a good time for you to add a license to your vCenter server if you have. But if you don't, I'm going to try and see if the evaluation period is going to work in my case as well. So if I click on details, I'll be able to see that when the license is going to expire, but 60 days are plenty of enough for me to create everything that I need from the videos. But yeah, an important thing is to manage the licenses, and depending on the license that you have, if it's a standard version or a professional version or professional enterprise plus, it's going to ask you to add the license under the add the key so it can enable the features, because from different point of versions there are different features that are enabled. So nevertheless, from here, if I click home, on the left side you will see the navigator, and we'll have a separate video of how you can navigate around the vCenter server. But for now we are just going to stick with just the basic configuration and installation. So under home you'll see that we have several options, but for the first option, what we need to do is we'll need to create a new data center object that in this data center we are going to add our esxi host. So I'm just going to name that NLB data center. Of course you can change the name to the name that you want, and I'm going to click OK. And now we have the data center holder that In here it should be empty, but you can see we have VMware made things a bit simple, that you can see what needs to be added to the data center so we can continue. And we are going to start by adding our first esxi host, which is going to be NLB esxi 0001 and nlblab.com, and click next. So for username and password, we will need to specify the root, password, account and password for the esxi host. Click next. Again, it's going to connect to the host and it's going to say that the certificate is not trusted, which is okay. And it's going to automatically add the virtual machines that I have on this host as well. So I'm going to click next. On the assign license, I'm going to just use the evaluation license that I have available. But if you have an already applied license, you can use that as well. So the next page, it will ask me for the lockdown mode, and if you remember from the previous videos, there are different ways to lock down, and now that we have a vCenter server, we can use this, but for now I'm just going to leave it disabled, and we are going to place the VMs under the data center and finish. So this process will now add the host to my vCenter server, and now the vCenter will be able to manage this host. Again, it's going to take some time to add the host, and you can see that at the moment it's not really happy with it, but we can just leave it the way it is and continue with adding the next host. So I'm going to right click, click add. And let's do the same with my second host, which is NLB. Okay, it's taking some time. NLB. Yeah, this is not working. Let me try again. So I'm not able to write anything at the moment. But I know how I can fix this, so let me try to copy something, paste it in here, and I'll be able to write now. So if you have problems with Adobe again, this is a workaround that I found out, but yeah. So nlblab.com and click next. Again, account, root and password. Next, accept the certificate, no virtual machines on this host, evaluation license, leave the lockdown mode to disabled, and yep, all defaults, and finish. So this is going to add my second esxi host to the vCenter. Now that we have both esxi hosts connected to the vCenter, under the summary, I'll be able to find out information about the host, like the way I was able to connect directly to it. And you can see I have a warning which we are going to fix on a later state, which is saying that the logs on this host are not saved on a persistent storage. But what I want to do is I want to set up my esxi hosts to be able to synchronize with the NTP server. So let me go under configuration and time configuration, and I'm going to click edit, and I'm going to configure the NTP server, which is going to be my domain controller, but in most cases you will configure an external NTP server for the vCenter and for the host as well, for the hosts as well. So we are going to start with host, and the NTP service is stopped at the moment, so we're going to click start. Okay, we have the NTP server and we are going to click OK. So this one is enabled at the moment, and we are going to do the same for the second host as well. So now the esxi hosts are syncing with an NTP server, which again I'm saying in my case it's an internal server, but in your case most probably you want to do it with an external NTP server, which is always syncing correctly, because time synchronization is really important. So lastly, I just want to show you how you can use the native backup tool to back up the vCenter server appliance, because this is a part of the actual lab and it's important. So we'll need to open the configuration page using the management port 5480, and yeah, it's going to be HTTPS. So advanced, add the exception, and this is basically the management appliance for the actual server appliance. So we are going to use the credentials that we've set up previously, and let me try to find them out. So it's going to be root. I think it was that. Let me try. Yep, these were the initial account, that you've configured while we were installing the vCenter appliance on the first stage. So it's an important account. With this account, you'll be able to log into the actual vCenter server. And on the left, you can see that we have several things that we can do from here, and it's a good thing to know what you can do with this management page. On the right side, you can see that I have the option to backup and several other options as well. So I recommend for you to go through these and get familiar with those. So I'm going to try to show you where you can back up the actual appliance, and you have several options. So you can use HTTPS or HTTP or FTP if that's needed, but yeah, in my case I don't think I'll be able to choose any, because I haven't configured any additional settings. But from here you can use the default that is built-in backup solution that VMware are providing, and you can back up your appliance. So just in case, if you don't have any third-party backup tools that you can back up the server, just in case something happens, you can use this one to restore from an earlier stage. So yeah, this is the way to back up the appliance, and I'm sorry that I'm not able to show you right now, but yeah, you can try it yourself. And this basically wraps up the video of how you can deploy a vCenter server and how you can make the initial configuration and add the initial esxi hosts to this vCenter. So on the next video we'll be navigating the different vSphere clients, because as you notice there are different web clients and HTTP5 clients. So we are going to browse through them and see how we can use them in our day-to-day administration working with VMware. If you like the video, you can always subscribe to the channel, and if you don't like it, you can always hit the thumbs down button, leave a comment, say what can be improved, and I'll try to improve it in the future. And yeah, if you have any questions whatsoever, you can put them in the comment section below, and I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. Thank you very much for viewing. This was Nick from Adobe Solutions, and this was the vCenter server installation and configuration.